Why Nick Saban should retire. Now, you Alabama fans, just hear me out here. I am not your classic Nick Saban hater that says he should retire because then my team can win. It's not like that. I just want to explain why he should retire. If he wants to retire on top, he better do it right now because this is probably the final year we're going to have a Clemson Bama ruling the college football world national championship type of season, because there's a lot of up-and-coming talent that Nick Saban's going to have to deal with, and that's not just counting the SEC, that's counting many teams outside of it. So let's kind of take it back. So Nick Saban went into Alabama during a low time in the SEC. He dominated. I believe he's won 6 national titles, and the SEC is still his. But you notice he's starting to get more competition, like Georgia. Every year, the past 2 years, Georgia has been the better team for 6 out of 8 quarters that they have played. Also, you have teams like A&M, LSU. They're on the up and coming. Auburn is always a threat. You never know what type of season Auburn is going to have. They're one of the most unpredictable teams in college football. You have teams, once he gets to the playoffs, that can actually compete with them, like Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson. So the best analogy that I can mix up with this, because I like to make it an analogy to the real world. Let's say you have a billionaires club. Right now, there's only about 3-4 people in there. Your Oklahomas, your Ohio States, your Clemsons, and Alabamas. But let's say the stock market rises, more people start getting richer, and billionaire isn't as prestigious as a title. They're not on the top of the mountain anymore. More teams are going to start being into that club. Your Georgias, your Floridas, your A&Ms, your LSUs, your Michigans, your Washingtons, all these teams, your Texas, all these teams that are going to start getting into that club very soon, possibly sooner than you might expect. So Nick Saban right now has to face probably 2 top 10 teams to get to the playoffs. LSU, who arguably is a top 10 team right now, and then the SEC representative, because right now it's either Florida or Georgia, and I would imagine both teams are going to be top 10 programs. So once he gets there, he goes to the semifinals. He's either going to face a team like Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame. He's going to beat them. Clemson's going to beat their opponent. He goes on to Clemson. They trade off every other year for national title. Clemson's really his only true competition that has beaten him. But this Alabama schedule is going to get really, really hard, really, really quickly. You see Texas A&M is on the rise. They're a top 15, arguably top 10 program right now. Definitely going to be a top 10 program in a year or two. Same with LSU, arguably top 10 program right now, definitely going to be in a year or two. Auburn, is always a wild card there. Florida, arguably top 10 program right now, definitely going to be in a year or two. Georgia, top 10 program. So Nick Saban is going to have to face 3 top 10 programs instead of just 2 right now, because he's going to have to face A&M, LSU, and here's the difference. LSU, they're a top 10 program, but they're not on the level of Alabama. There's a huge talent drop. There's not going to be much talent drop. A&M, LSU really soon are going to be on Alabama level. And assuming Nick Saban can get through that and can get through Auburn, A&M, LSU, he's going to have to face either Florida or Georgia for the next couple of years, and they're both going to be top 10, if not top 5 programs. So that's just the SEC. He has to face 3, sometimes 4 top 10 programs per year just to get out of the SEC and to make it to the playoffs. And so A&M, LSU in a year or two are both going to be top 10 programs. Same with Florida, Georgia, if they aren't already. Auburn, obviously, Gus Malzahn, in my opinion, is a great coach. They're always going to be inconsistent. You have rising teams like South Carolina and Tennessee. So Nick Saban has to face Auburn, A&M, LSU just every single year. And then the cross-division rivals, the East is getting a lot of depth right now. With Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, some wild card teams that realistically could be Alabama, especially in a couple years. Florida, Georgia, obviously the top tier SEC East teams right now. And let's say he's able to get through the East. There's more teams on the rise. Texas, Oklahoma, obviously from the Big 12. Michigan, Ohio State, obviously from the Big Ten. Clemson, of course. As long as Dabo Swinney's there, they're never going to be worse than a top 5 program. Pac-12 has some sleeping giants over there like Washington, and if USC can get a great coach, maybe an Urban Meyer type person, or maybe even just Urban Meyer himself, they can get back up at the top of the mountain. You have some non-conference teams like Notre Dame and UCF who you never really know what they're going to do. There's a lot of teams that are getting into that top of the mountain. It's not just Alabama and another team now. It's not just Alabama and Clemson or Alabama and Ohio State. It's going to be a lot of teams. It's Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida, Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Clemson, obviously, maybe in a couple years, Washington and USC. Maybe some teams like Miami can get back in the ACC. So there's a lot of talent right now. The talent pool is ever rising because here's why. So teams like Alabama, obviously they're going to rule their states, but they're not going to pick. There's going to be some 5 stars left behind. Like Clemson and the state of South Carolina, they're obviously going to pick the top. They're going to probably get them, and then they're going to head nationally immediately. And South Carolina is going to have 5 stars left by Clemson in their backyard for them to just pick up. Florida obviously can control the state of Florida. Recruiting, there is so much talent. Obviously, you could probably throw a rock out your window in Texas and hit a 4-star or 5-star recruit. They are loaded with them. Same with Florida, same with Georgia, same with the Carolinas now. Obviously, California, Washington's stepping up in the state of recruiting. There's just so much talent right now. There hasn't been enough talent to go around, or if it would be Alabama and Clemson just getting all of it. Now the talent's kind of spreading out. Some going to Texas and Oklahoma, some going to Michigan and Ohio State, some going down to Florida and Georgia, some going to A&M and LSU. Alabama actually has some genuine competition for recruiting. Kirby Smart's been competing back and forth with Nick Saban in the past couple years. And in a couple years, Jimbo Fisher, Ed Orgeron, if Dan Mullen can get things going there, Dabo Swinney, Jim Harbaugh, the Ohio State coach, I forgot his name. All these coaches are legit going to have a shot to compete with Nick Saban, not just in recruiting, but when it comes down to the season, they're going to have the talent to be able to compete with Alabama. It's no longer just 2 or 3 teams at the top of the mountain that Alabama has to beat. 10 or 15 teams are going to be up there at the top of the mountain. Nick Saban's going to have to go through all of them. So it's not just going to be Alabama at the top anymore. There is a lot of teams on the up and up, and it's not going to be 5 years. It's going to be in a year or 2. Yeah, there will be some teams in 5 years like South Carolina and Tennessee, but right now, Florida, LSU, A&M, and Georgia, and Auburn, that's just in the SEC. Once you get out of it, Big 12 representation, Texas, Oklahoma, Big 10, Ohio State, Michigan, ACC, obviously Clemson, and maybe some other teams. Pac-12 has a lot of sleeping giants like Oregon, Washington, and USC. There's so much, and obviously the non-conference teams like UCF and Notre Dame specifically right now. There is so much talent surrounding college football. College football is rising in talent. Now, teams like South Carolina or Tennessee or Kentucky, right now a lot of people see those teams as average. The only reason they see them as average is because the schedule, there's not enough wins to go around for everybody. They're not calling them average because their talent's average. Their talent is good. The schedule and the fact that there's not enough wins to go around is why they're calling them average. Like a team like South Carolina, back in 2010, I'm pretty sure South Carolina made it to the SEC championship. I think this South Carolina team could definitely beat that South Carolina team in 2010. If you disagree with me, that's kind of whatever. That's just my opinion. I think this South Carolina team right now is better than that South Carolina team in 2010. And that South Carolina team in 2010 made it to the SEC title game. This South Carolina team or this Kentucky team or this Tennessee team right now is just average in the SEC. They're the lower tier SEC teams. So that just shows you how elite the teams at the top tier of the SEC actually are. Mark my words, this will be the last year where it's just Clemson and Alabama dominating. There's going to be rotations between the teams at the top tier every single year. Some year it will be teams like Texas and Florida, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan. There are about 20 top 10 caliber teams, and you pick the best out of that. In the past, it's just been about 5 top 10 caliber teams, and only 2 of them, or 1 of them, could compete with Alabama. Now about 10 teams could legit compete with Alabama. Nick Saban has to go through probably 3 or 4 of them, depending on the year in the SEC. Definitely 3, sometimes 4 or 5 in the SEC. 3 in his own division, and then 1 from the SEC East. And assuming he makes that, he's going to have to beat teams like Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, and obviously Clemson. So Nick Saban, if he wants to retire out on top, your time is running out, because in a year or 2, it's not just going to be the Alabama show anymore. It's going to be the everybody show. Alabama is not going to stick out from a talent perspective. They're still going to be great. They're still going to be top 5, and they still may be able to win a national title or 2, but it's not going to be consistent Alabama dominance. Alabama's roster and their coaching staff is not going to stick out anymore. Alabama will not be at the top of the mountain anymore, or at least they won't be up there alone. There are going to be 10 or 15 teams up there in the party, and Alabama is no longer going to be sticking out as the giant in college football. Mark my words, Alabama will become ordinary once these 10 or 15 teams really get their programs rolling, like Texas at Texas A&M, LSU, Florida, Georgia's already there. Sleeping giants in the Pac-12 like Washington, USC, maybe even Oregon. Obviously the Big Ten representation from Ohio State and Michigan. Alabama is no longer the kings of college football. There is no king of college football now. There's no longer one dominating team, whether it's Alabama or Clemson. There is now 10 or 15 national title contenders. And if Nick Saban wants to retire on top, he better win the national title, and he better retire quickly, because really, really fast, Alabama is going to become ordinary. That's not a knock on Alabama. I think they're still going to be a top 5, top 3 program every single year. But there's going to be teams right behind them that are just as good, that are hungry for that top spot. So if Nick Saban, again, wants to retire on top, he better do it very, very quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm checking my other content. A lot of content coming your way. 1 month until college football starts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have an amazing day, and peace.